The most dangerous thing about Adrian Moretti wasn't that he could ruin a man's life with a single phone call. It was the way he could look at me like I was the center of his world, while never once asking me to stay. Rain blurred the Manhattan skyline outside the penthouse windows, turning millions of dollars worth of city lights into soft streaks of gold and white across the glass. Midnight had passed an hour ago, but Adrian's world never slept. Men in dark suits still moved quietly through the lower floors of the building. Phones still buzzed. Deals were still being made somewhere beneath us while jazz played low through hidden speakers and the smell of expensive whiskey lingered in the air like smoke. I stood near the marble kitchen counter slipping on my coat with shaking hands. I pretended not to notice. Adrian sat across the room on the black leather sofa, one arm stretched along the back cushion, his attention fixed on the glowing screen of his phone. Calm. Untouchable. Beautiful in the coldest possible way. At 34, Adrian Moretti looked less like a crime boss and more like the kind of man women wrote songs about after ruining their own lives for him. Dark hair pushed back neatly. Sharp jawline. Gray eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Even now, wearing nothing but black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, he looked terrifyingly composed. Like the storm outside answered to him personally. I waited for him to say something. Anything. Don't go. Stay the night. Are you upset? But silence filled the penthouse so completely I could hear the ticking of the gold watch on his wrist from 20 feet away. 2 years. 2 years of dinners that felt like dates without ever being called dates. 2 years of him sending drivers when my car broke down. Of security guards appearing outside my apartment after I mentioned feeling unsafe on the subway one single time. 2 years of flowers arriving at my office with no card even though we both knew who sent them. Adrian protected me like I belonged to him. But he never actually claimed me. And somehow that hurt worse than rejection. I grabbed my purse from the counter, forcing a smile that didn't feel real anymore. I should go. Adrian finally looked up. Those gray eyes landed on me with enough intensity to make my pulse stumble. It's raining hard. His voice was low, smooth, controlled. Always controlled. I'll call Luca to drive you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because of course that was his answer. Not stay. Not don't leave. A driver. Another layer of distance wrapped in protection. You don't have to keep taking care of me like I'm your responsibility, I said quietly. Something flickered behind his expression. Gone too fast to name. Claire. The way he said my name should have meant something. It used to. Now it just felt dangerous to hope. I swallowed the tightness in my throat and looked away before he could see it. Good night, Adrian. For a second, I thought he might stand up. His hand flexed once against the leather couch. His jaw tightened slightly. Tiny cracks in the perfect control he wore like armor. Then his phone buzzed again. And just like that, the moment disappeared. Good night, he said softly. That was it. I nodded once and walked toward the elevator before my pride completely abandoned me. The private elevator doors slid shut behind me with a quiet metallic whisper. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls. Green eyes glassy with disappointment. Lips pressed together too tightly. I hated that I still wanted him to stop me. The elevator descended slowly through 47 floors of silence while rain hammered against the building outside. By the time I stepped into the underground garage, my chest ached with the kind of loneliness that only comes from loving someone emotionally unavailable. Luca hurried toward me holding a black umbrella over his head. Miss Bennett, he called. Mr. Moretti wants me to drive you home. Of course he did. I forced another smile and shook my head. Tell Adrian I'm fine. Luca hesitated. The poor man looked genuinely nervous. He won't like that. The words slipped out before I could stop them. That's the problem, Luca. I don't think Adrian Moretti likes anything enough to fight for it. Rain soaked through my coat the second I stepped outside onto the empty street. Cold wind whipped through Manhattan, stinging my cheeks as headlights reflected across wet pavement. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking toward the corner, heels clicking against the sidewalk. Above me, 47 floors higher, one single light remained on inside the penthouse windows. I told myself not to look back. I looked anyway. And somewhere behind that glass, hidden in shadows and silence, Adrian Moretti was still watching me leave. 3 days later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror holding a pair of diamond earrings I could never afford and wondering why heartbreak always made women do stupid things. Rain tapped softly against my apartment windows while steam curled through the tiny bathroom from the shower I had taken 20 minutes earlier. Manhattan glowed outside in blurry gold streaks beneath another winter storm, and somewhere downtown, the charity gala of the season was already beginning. I should not have been nervous. It was only a fundraiser at the Whitmore Hotel. Interior designers, investors, politicians, wealthy people pretending to care about children while drinking $1,200 champagne. I had attended dozens of events like this with Adrian over the past 2 years. The difference tonight was simple. Adrian was not taking me. Ethan Cole was. "You are staring at those earrings like they personally offended you," my friend Vanessa said from my kitchen. "Either wear them or throw them at somebody." I let out a weak laugh and stepped out of the bathroom holding the earrings in my palm. "They were delivered this morning." Vanessa's eyebrows lifted immediately. "No card?" "No card. We both knew who sent them. Adrian never signed anything. He did not need to. The gifts always arrived exactly when I was upset with him. Flowers after arguments. A coat after I casually mentioned being cold one night. A first edition architecture book after hearing me talk about it once 6 months earlier. He noticed everything. Except the fact that I was slowly breaking my own heart loving him. Vanessa crossed her arms. "And you are still going with Ethan?" I slid the earrings on slowly, watching the diamonds catch the soft apartment light. "Especially now." Her expression shifted into concern. "Claire, if this is about making Adrian jealous, maybe he deserves to feel something for once." Silence settled between us. Even saying it out loud made guilt twist in my stomach. Because the truth was ugly. Ethan was sweet. Funny. Safe. A financial consultant with kind brown eyes and zero connection to organized crime. He had asked me to dinner twice before I finally said yes this week. Not because I wanted Ethan. Because I was tired of feeling invisible to the man I actually wanted. My phone buzzed across the counter. Unknown number. But my pulse reacted anyway. I answered before thinking. "Hello." Silence. Then breathing. Low. Controlled. Familiar. "Adrian." My chest tightened instantly. "Claire." Just my name. Deep enough to unravel me from 3 syllables alone. I leaned against the counter, suddenly unable to breathe normally. "How did you get this number?" "You changed it yesterday." Not a question. Of course he knew. Of course nothing escaped Adrian Moretti. "What do you want?" Another pause. I could hear faint jazz music in the background wherever he was. Ice clinked softly against glass. "You are attending the Whitmore Gala tonight." Again, not a question. Heat flared behind my ribs. "You already know the answer, so why ask?" His voice stayed maddeningly calm. "Who are you going with?" There it was. The first crack in the perfect control. Small. Barely visible. But real. I closed my eyes for one dangerous second and imagined him sitting alone somewhere in one of his black tailored suits, jaw tight, whiskey untouched beside him. The image almost softened me. Almost. Then I remembered standing in his penthouse begging silently for affection he never gave. A man named Ethan, I answered quietly. Silence exploded through the phone line so heavily I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Adrian spoke again, softer this time. Colder too. I see. That was all. No anger. No pleading. No emotion at all. The line disconnected. Vanessa stared at me from across the kitchen. Well? I swallowed hard, staring down at the dark screen in my hand. Somewhere deep beneath the hurt, something dangerous flickered alive inside me for the first time in months. I whispered slowly, Adrian Moretti finally noticed me leaving. The Whitmore Hotel looked like something pulled from an old money fantasy. Crystal chandeliers spilled warm gold light across polished marble floors while violin music drifted through the ballroom soft enough to feel expensive. Men in tuxedos moved through the crowd carrying glasses of champagne that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill, and women in designer gowns smiled the way rich people did when they were secretly judging each other. Ethan offered me his arm as we entered the ballroom together. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "You look nervous." I forced a smile and adjusted the silver fabric of my dress against my knees. "Just tired." It was a lie. My nerves had nothing to do with the gala and everything to do with the man I had not seen yet but could somehow already feel. Ethan guided me deeper into the crowd while flashes from cameras exploded near the entrance. He looked good tonight. Navy tuxedo. Clean cut. Warm smile. The kind of man any sane woman should have chosen months ago instead of emotionally attaching herself to a man who treated vulnerability like a disease. "You clean up dangerous," Ethan teased lightly. I laughed softly. "Real this time." "Dangerous?" "Half the men in this room have looked at you since we walked in." He leaned closer with an easy confidence Adrian never had. "I am trying not to become violently insecure." The irony nearly made me choke on my champagne. Because somewhere in this building was a man who would never joke about jealousy. A man who would bury it beneath silence until it turned into something sharp enough to cut through the room without a single raised voice. As if my thoughts had summoned him, the atmosphere shifted suddenly. It was subtle at first. Conversations lowered slightly. Heads turned. Security near the entrance straightened almost instantly. Then I saw him. Adrian Moretti stepped into the ballroom wearing an all-black tuxedo tailored so perfectly it looked painted onto him. Rain still clung faintly to his dark hair from outside, and the cold winter air followed him into the room like a shadow. Men twice his age nodded respectfully as he passed. Women stared openly. Adrian barely noticed any of them. His attention landed directly on me. The entire ballroom disappeared around me for one terrifying second. God! I had forgotten what those eyes could do to me. Gray. Calm. Controlled. Except tonight something underneath them looked dangerously restrained. His gaze dropped slowly to Ethan's hand resting against the small of my back. The temperature in the room seemed to change instantly. Ethan followed my stare and nearly choked on his drink. "That is Adrian Moretti," he muttered under his breath. "The Adrian Moretti?" I looked away too quickly. "You know who he is?" Ethan gave a nervous laugh. "Claire, everyone in Manhattan knows who Adrian Moretti is." Of course they did. Adrian moved through the ballroom toward us with the kind of quiet authority that made people instinctively clear space without understanding why. No bodyguards beside him tonight. He did not need them. The power radiating off him was enough on its own. My pulse hammered harder with every step he took closer. Ethan shifted beside me uncomfortably. Should I be worried? Probably, I whispered before I could stop myself. Adrian stopped directly in front of us. Up close, he smelled like cedarwood, rain, and expensive whiskey. Familiar enough to hurt. His eyes met mine first. Not Ethan's. Never Ethan's. Claire. My name sounded lower tonight. Rougher somehow. You look beautiful. The compliment hit me harder than it should have because Adrian almost never gave compliments. Not out loud. Ethan extended his hand politely. Ethan Cole. Adrian looked at the offered hand for one long second before finally shaking it once. Firm. Controlled. Cold. Adrian Moretti. Silence stretched between them like piano wire. Ethan recovered first. Claire was just telling me about the renovation project she is leading downtown. Adrian's gaze returned to me immediately. She works too much. The possessiveness hidden inside the sentence made heat crawl up my neck. Ethan laughed awkwardly. Well, ambitious women are usually impressive. Adrian's expression never changed. They are also dangerous when ignored. My breath caught instantly. The words were quiet enough that nobody else would understand them for what they really were. But I did. Every inch of me did. For the first time in 2 years, Adrian Moretti sounded jealous. And somehow that terrified me more than his silence ever had. By the time dinner was served, I could feel Adrian's attention on me from across the ballroom like heat against skin. Not constant. Somehow worse than that. Controlled. Deliberate. Every time I laughed at something Ethan said, every time Ethan leaned closer to speak over the orchestra music, I felt those gray eyes return to me for a few silent seconds before disappearing again. It should not have affected me this much. But Adrian Moretti had spent 2 years teaching my body to recognize him before my mind even had the chance to catch up. I think your friend wants me dead, Ethan muttered quietly as he adjusted his tie for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. I nearly smiled into my wine glass. He is not my friend. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That somehow sounds worse. Across the ballroom, Adrian stood near the massive floor-to-ceiling windows speaking with 3 men in dark tailored suits. The city lights behind him turned his silhouette into something sharp and untouchable. One of the men spoke continuously while Adrian barely reacted, his focus drifting toward me every few seconds like he could not stop himself. Then Ethan touched my hand. Such a small thing. Casual. Warm fingers brushing lightly against mine beside the tablecloth while he laughed softly at his own joke. But the effect across the room was immediate. Adrian went completely still. Even from 40 feet away, I saw it happen. The subtle tightening in his jaw. The pause in his breathing. The dangerous calm that settled over his face afterward. One of the men speaking to him noticed too because he slowly stopped talking mid-sentence. Ethan followed my stare again and swallowed hard. Claire, he whispered carefully, I am starting to understand why people seem afraid of him. I looked down quickly. You do not need to be afraid. The lie tasted weak even to me. Because Adrian was not acting jealous like normal men did. He was acting restrained. Like every emotion inside him was being crushed beneath years of brutal self-control. And somehow that felt infinitely more dangerous. A slow song drifted through the ballroom from the orchestra stage. Couples began moving toward the dance floor beneath the chandeliers while waiters refreshed champagne glasses around the room. Ethan smiled gently and stood from his chair. Dance with me? Every instinct inside me screamed no. Not because I did not want to dance. Because somewhere behind me stood a man capable of making my pulse spike from a single look. And I already knew this would push him further. Which was exactly why I said yes. Ethan led me carefully onto the dance floor while soft piano music filled the air around us. His hand settled respectfully against my waist. Warm. Safe. Normal. Everything Adrian had never been. You are shaking, Ethan murmured. I think I made a terrible decision accepting this invitation. I let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like laughter. You definitely did. Around us, wealthy couples swayed beneath gold light while snow began falling softly outside the towering windows. Manhattan glittered in the distance like another universe entirely. Ethan spun me slowly once across the dance floor, and when I looked up again, Adrian was no longer near the windows. My stomach dropped instantly. Where did he go? Ethan frowned slightly. Who? Then a low familiar voice sounded directly behind us. May I borrow Claire for a moment? The music did not stop. Neither did the dancing. But the air around us changed anyway. Ethan turned slowly. Adrian stood inches away wearing the same calm expression that had terrified half the city for years. Except now I noticed the tiny signs beneath it. The tension in his shoulders. The faint flex in his hand at his side. The way his eyes stayed locked on Ethan's hand resting against my waist. Ethan immediately removed it. Smart man. Of course, Ethan said carefully. Adrian did not thank him. His attention had already shifted entirely back to me. Outside, he said quietly. Not a request. My heart hammered so violently I thought he might actually hear it over the orchestra. Adrian, now, Claire. The way he said my name sent a sharp chill through me. Cold. Possessive. Barely controlled. And for the first time since I met him, Adrian Moretti did not look emotionally distant. He looked jealous enough to finally break. Cold winter air hit my skin the second Adrian pushed open the terrace doors. Snow drifted softly over Manhattan beyond the balcony while traffic lights glowed red and gold nearly 50 floors below us. The sounds of the ballroom disappeared behind the glass doors, leaving only the distant hum of the city and the sharp rhythm of my heartbeat. Adrian stood a few feet away from me near the balcony railing, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping a crystal whiskey glass hard enough to make me nervous for it. He had not said a single word since dragging me outside. Somehow the silence felt louder than shouting. I crossed my arms tightly against the cold. You are acting insane. Adrian finally looked at me. Gray eyes sharp enough to cut through steel. Am I? Yes. My breath fogged in front of me as snowflakes landed against my bare shoulders. You embarrassed Ethan. Good. The answer came instantly. Flat. Controlled. My chest tightened. Why are you acting like this? Adrian laughed once under his breath. No humor in it at all. You really want to ask me that while arriving here with another man hanging on your arm? Heat rushed into my face immediately. You do not get to sound jealous right now. His jaw flexed visibly. Jealous. He repeated the word quietly like he hated the taste of it. You disappeared from my life for 3 days, changed your number, and walked into my event with a stranger touching you all night. Your event? I snapped. That is the problem with you, Adrian. Everything belongs to you except your actual feelings. Silence. Snow collected lightly against the shoulders of his black tuxedo while city lights reflected across the sharp planes of his face. God, he looked beautiful when angry. Dangerous too. Claire. My name sounded exhausted now. You know this is not simple. I laughed bitterly. No, what is not simple is spending 2 years with a man who acts like my boyfriend in private but turns emotionally unavailable the second things become real. Adrian's eyes darkened instantly. I have protected you. I did not ask for protection. The words echoed harder than I intended. A muscle moved sharply in his jaw again. That is because you do not understand the world I live in. Then explain it to me. My voice cracked through the cold air before I could stop it. Because I am exhausted, Adrian. I am exhausted from trying to decode feelings you refuse to admit exist. He went still. Completely still. Somewhere behind the glass ballroom doors, violins continued playing while wealthy strangers danced beneath chandeliers completely unaware that my entire heart was unraveling on a snow-covered terrace. Adrian stared at me for several long seconds before speaking again. Did you sleep with him? The question hit me so hard I actually stepped back. What? His grip tightened around the whiskey glass. Ethan. His voice lowered dangerously. Did you? Anger exploded through me instantly. You do not get to ask me that. Answer the question. No, the word came sharp and immediate. Adrian exhaled slowly through his nose, relief flickering across his face so quickly most people would have missed it. I did not. And suddenly everything became painfully clear. The jealousy. The possessiveness. The way his eyes tracked me all night like he was 1 second away from losing control completely. My heart pounded harder. Oh my God. Adrian frowned slightly. What? I stared at him through falling snow, disbelief mixing with fury inside my chest. You really do love me. The words landed between us like shattered glass. Adrian froze. For the first time since I met him, the man looked caught off guard. Actually vulnerable. His throat moved once like he wanted to speak but could not find the words fast enough. And somehow that tiny hesitation hurt worse than everything else. Tears burned behind my eyes before I could stop them. You had 2 years to say it, I whispered. Adrian took 1 step toward me immediately. Claire, I backed away. No, my voice broke softly. You do not get to wait until another man notices me before. Suddenly remembering how to feel. Behind us, the terrace doors opened slightly as warm ballroom light spilled onto the snow-covered floor. One of Adrian's men stood there carefully avoiding eye contact. Boss, he said quietly. There is a situation downstairs. Adrian never looked away from me. Not once. But the second he turned his head toward the voice, I saw it happen. The mask sliding back into place. Cold. Controlled. Untouchable again. And for the first time that night, I realized something terrifying. Adrian Moretti did not know how to love someone without also fearing it. Adrian disappeared downstairs for less than 15 minutes. Long enough for the snow on the terrace railing to thicken. Long enough for my anger to cool into something more dangerous. Clarity. I stayed outside alone after he left, arms wrapped tightly around myself while cold wind tangled my hair across my face. Manhattan glittered beneath me like another universe entirely. Beautiful from a distance. Brutal up close. The terrace doors opened again behind me, and for 1 stupid second my heart reacted before my brain did. Adrian. Of course. He stepped back outside with the same composed expression he wore everywhere else in the world, but I noticed the details now. The slight tension in his shoulders. The loosened bow tie at his throat. The exhaustion hidden beneath all that control. You should not stand out here in this weather, he said quietly. I laughed under my breath without turning around. There he is. Silence. The man who worries about me constantly but refuses to admit why. Adrian moved closer slowly until I could feel his presence behind me like heat against my skin. Claire, no, I shook my head immediately. You do not get to say my name like that and expect everything to disappear. Snowflakes melted against the black sleeves of his tuxedo while the city wind carried distant sirens somewhere far below us. You think I do not see it? I whispered. The cars outside my apartment. The bodyguards pretending not to follow me. The flowers. The gifts. You have spent 2 years loving me in every possible way except honestly. Adrian stared at me in silence. I turned toward him finally, my chest tightening at the expression on his face. God. He looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like fighting himself had become exhausting. Do you know what hurts the most? My voice cracked softly. It is not that you are dangerous. It is not your world. It is not even the secrets. It is the fact that every time I start believing you might actually want me, you pull away like I imagined the whole thing. Adrian's jaw tightened hard enough to visibly shift beneath his skin. Because wanting you is the one thing in my life I cannot control. The confession hit me like cold air straight through my lungs. He stepped closer before I could react. Do you think this has been easy for me? His voice dropped lower now. Rougher. Honest in a way I had never heard before. Every room you walk into changes for me. Every time you smile at another man, I stop hearing conversations around me. Tonight I nearly walked across that ballroom and took you away from him in front of everyone. My pulse stumbled violently. Adrian exhaled slowly through his nose and looked away toward the city lights. That is exactly why I kept my distance. That does not make sense. It makes perfect sense in my world. He looked back at me again, and suddenly all the cold control cracked wide enough for me to finally see the fear underneath it. Real fear. Claire, men have used women as leverage against me for years. Threats. Manipulation. Blackmail. Every person close to me becomes a target eventually. My anger faded slowly into something heavier. So you decided to punish both of us instead? Adrian laughed quietly again. Bitter this time. I thought if I never said it out loud, maybe I could protect you from becoming important enough to destroy me. Tears burned behind my eyes before I could stop them. Adrian, but then tonight happened. He took another slow step toward me until almost no space remained between us. Snow gathered lightly in his dark hair while warm ballroom light spilled around us through the glass doors behind him. And watching another man touch you made me realize something terrifying. His voice lowered to barely above a whisper. I would rather be destroyed than spend one more day pretending I do not belong to you. My breath caught completely. Adrian's hand lifted slowly toward my face before stopping inches away, like even now he was afraid to cross lines he had spent 2 years building. Tell me to walk away, he whispered. Tell me this was all a game and I will leave you alone forever. The city noise below us disappeared entirely beneath the sound of my heartbeat. Because for the first time since I met Adrian Moretti, the most powerful man in the room was not acting untouchable. He was standing in front of me looking absolutely terrified of losing me. For one dangerous second, I almost told Adrian exactly what he wanted to hear. My heart was already halfway there anyway. Standing beneath falling snow with Manhattan glowing behind him, Adrian looked less like the cold king everyone feared and more like a man finally losing a war against his own emotions. But before I could speak, the terrace doors slammed open behind us hard enough to make me jump. One of Adrian's security men stepped outside breathing fast, snow melting across the shoulders of his black suit. Boss. His voice sounded tense. We have a problem. Adrian never took his eyes off me. What happened? The man hesitated briefly after noticing the expression on Adrian's face. Fear flickered through him for half a second. Mr. Cole is gone. The cold air suddenly felt much sharper. What do you mean gone? I asked immediately. The guard shifted uncomfortably. He left the ballroom approximately 4 minutes ago after receiving a phone call. His vehicle never exited the garage. Adrian's expression changed instantly. Not panic. Worse. Calculation. Every trace of vulnerability vanished behind something colder and infinitely more dangerous. My stomach twisted hard. This is because of me. Adrian looked toward the city for 1/10 second before pulling a phone from his pocket. Get eyes on every garage exit now, he ordered sharply into the line. Nobody leaves until I know where Ethan Cole is. Adrian, he looked at me again immediately. You are leaving with my security team. No, the answer came out before he even finished speaking. I am not hiding behind bodyguards because someone got dramatic over a charity gala. Claire. His voice dropped lower. Controlled. Barely. This is not a joke anymore. Fear finally crept beneath my ribs. Real fear this time. Snow continued falling softly around us while muffled orchestra music drifted through the ballroom behind the glass, absurdly elegant compared to the tension tightening the air between us. What is happening? I whispered. Adrian stared at me for a long second before answering honestly. Someone thinks Ethan matters to you. The realization hit me instantly. Hard enough to make my pulse stumble. Because of tonight. Adrian did not deny it. Somewhere below us, tires screeched faintly in the underground levels of the hotel garage. Multiple voices crackled through Adrian's phone at once. He listened silently, jaw tightening with every passing second. Then he swore quietly under his breath in Italian. I had only heard Adrian curse twice before. Both times had been very bad. Tell me, I demanded softly. Adrian slid the phone back into his pocket slowly. A black SUV forced Ethan's driver away from the curb 10 minutes ago. Ice flooded through my chest. Oh my God. Adrian stepped closer immediately, both hands settling firmly on my shoulders. Warm. Steady. Grounding me before panic could fully take over. Listen to me carefully. His gray eyes locked onto mine with terrifying intensity. This is my fault. I should have handled tonight differently. Adrian, I pushed emotions into public view that should have stayed private. His voice sounded rough now. Angry at himself more than anything else. And now somebody is trying to use that against me. The guilt hit hard enough to make breathing difficult. Ethan had only come tonight because of me. Because I wanted Adrian jealous. Because I wanted proof he cared. We have to help him. We will. Adrian's thumbs brushed lightly against my arms once before he forced himself to step back again. Distance. Even now. But first I need to get you somewhere safe. I shook my head immediately. I am not leaving while Ethan is missing. Adrian closed his eyes briefly like he was fighting for patience. Claire, please. The word shattered me slightly because Adrian Moretti never said please. Ever. Another security guard appeared suddenly through the terrace doors. Boss, we traced the SUV heading toward the east side warehouses. Adrian nodded once sharply. Then he looked back at me, and for the first time all night, I saw it clearly. Fear. Not for himself. For me. You wanted honesty, he said quietly. Snow melted against the dark fabric of his tuxedo while city lights reflected in his gray eyes. Fine. Here it is. His voice lowered almost to a whisper. The thought of something happening to you terrifies me more than anything I have ever faced in my life. My heart broke open completely. Because finally, after 2 years of silence, Adrian Moretti was no longer hiding how deeply he loved me. And somehow that was exactly what put us both in danger. The drive across Manhattan felt endless. Snow slammed against the windows of Adrian's black Escalade while the city blurred past in streaks of red brake lights and frozen glass. Inside the SUV, silence stretched painfully between us except for the low murmur of phone calls coming from the men seated in front. Adrian sat beside me in the back seat, one hand gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Every few minutes another update came through his earpiece. Every update made his expression darker. I had never seen him like this before. Not cold. Not distant. Focused. Terrified. They found Ethan's driver, one of the men in front finally said quietly. He is okay. Shaken up, but okay. Relief hit me instantly so hard my eyes closed for one brief second. And Ethan? Adrian asked. No sign yet. The SUV turned sharply onto a quieter industrial street near the East River where old warehouses stood beneath flickering lights and falling snow. The farther we drove from Midtown, the emptier the roads became. My stomach twisted tighter with every passing block. Adrian noticed immediately. He always noticed. His hand found mine without warning. Warm. Steady. Strong enough to ground me instantly. I looked down at our hands together in shock because Adrian almost never initiated affection openly. Not where other people could see. But tonight he did not seem to care anymore. "Look at me," he said softly. I lifted my eyes toward him. The exhaustion on his face hit me harder now beneath the dim lights inside the SUV. "Nothing is happening to you tonight." The certainty in his voice should have comforted me. Instead it made my chest ache. "You cannot promise that." Adrian's thumb brushed lightly against my knuckles once. "I can promise I will never stop trying." God. 2 years waiting for him to say things like that. And now every word sounded pulled painfully out of somewhere deep inside him. The SUV slowed near a row of abandoned loading docks before finally stopping beside a massive brick warehouse overlooking the frozen river. Snow swirled violently through the air outside beneath broken security lights. Adrian's men moved immediately, speaking into radios while scanning the dark building entrances. One of them opened Adrian's door. "Boss, we found Mr. Cole inside about 5 minutes ago. He is unharmed." Relief nearly made me collapse. "Thank God." He says whoever grabbed him released him after realizing he was not connected to Miss Bennett the way they assumed. Adrian closed his eyes briefly like the confirmation only deepened his anger at himself. Then he stepped out into the snow and immediately reached back for me. His hand wrapped tightly around mine while icy wind tore through the street around us. "Stay beside me," he said quietly. We crossed the loading dock together beneath flickering lights while snow crunched beneath our shoes. Ethan stood near the warehouse entrance wrapped in one of Adrian's security coats looking pale but otherwise unharmed. The second he saw me, relief flooded his face. "Claire." I rushed toward him instantly. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." He laughed shakily. "Honestly, I am mostly confused." His eyes shifted carefully toward Adrian standing beside me. "Your boyfriend has terrifying employees, by the way." Heat rushed into my face immediately. Adrian stayed silent beside me, but I felt his attention lock sharply onto the word boyfriend. Ethan rubbed a hand through his hair awkwardly. "Some men grabbed me outside the hotel asking questions about you." Then suddenly Adrian's people showed up and everybody panicked. He looked between us slowly. "I feel like I accidentally walked into a movie I do not belong in." Despite everything, I almost smiled. Adrian finally spoke. "A driver will take you home." Ethan nodded immediately. Smart enough not to argue. Before leaving, he leaned slightly closer to me. "For what it is worth," he said quietly, "that man looked ready to burn this city down trying to find you tonight." Then he glanced once toward Adrian. "I would not make him wait much longer if I were you." Ethan disappeared into another SUV moments later, leaving Adrian and me standing alone near the frozen river while snow continued falling around us in thick white silence. Adrian stared out toward the dark water for several seconds before finally speaking. "I am sorry." The words were so quiet I almost missed them. "This should never have touched your life." I stepped closer slowly. But it did. Adrian looked at me then, and suddenly the exhaustion in his eyes nearly broke me apart. "Claire, when I thought someone had taken you tonight," his voice failed briefly before he forced it steady again. I could not breathe properly. My heart cracked wide open at the honesty in that confession. Adrian Moretti, the man who controlled entire rooms with a single glance, stood in the snow looking emotionally wrecked because of me. And for the first time since I met him, he was no longer hiding it. 3 weeks later, Manhattan Opera House glittered beneath thousands of golden lights while snow fell softly across the city outside like the world itself had slowed down for the evening. Black cars lined the street for nearly half a block. Politicians. Billionaires. Old money families wrapped in diamonds and tailored tuxedos moved beneath towering marble columns while cameras flashed endlessly across the entrance. Every important person in New York seemed to be there tonight. Which was exactly why my hands would not stop shaking. "You are going to wrinkle the dress if you keep doing that," Vanessa whispered beside me as she adjusted the silver strap on my shoulder. I stared at my reflection in the Limousine window instead of answering. Adrian had invited me personally this time. No assistance. No cryptic flowers. No emotional distance hidden behind expensive gifts. Just a quiet phone call 2 nights ago. Come with me. Simple. Honest. Terrifying. The limousine door opened before I could overthink it further. Cold winter air rushed inside alongside flashes from cameras outside. Then Adrian appeared beside the car. God. Even after everything, the sight of him still stole the air from my lungs. Black tuxedo. Dark hair brushed neatly back. Gray eyes softer tonight than I had ever seen them before. Powerful enough to command the entire street without raising his voice once. But when he looked at me, none of that power felt frightening anymore. It felt careful. Adrian extended his hand toward me slowly. Not rushed. Giving me the choice he had denied both of us for 2 years. You came, he said quietly. I placed my hand in his. Warmth wrapped instantly around my fingers. You asked. Something flickered through his expression then. Relief maybe. Or disbelief that I was still here after finally seeing the truth of his world. Camera flashes exploded harder the second Adrian helped me out onto the red carpet beside him. Reporters immediately started shouting questions. Mr. Moretti. Who is the woman with you tonight? Are the engagement rumors true? Adrian ignored every single one of them. His focus never left me while we climbed the marble stairs together beneath falling snow. Nervous, he asked softly once we reached the entrance. I let out a shaky laugh. Your city looks terrifying from this angle. Adrian's mouth curved very slightly. Not quite a smile. Closer than most people ever got from him. It is not my city anymore. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? He looked at me for one long second before answering. It means I am tired of building a life that does not include you openly. My heartbeat stumbled so hard it almost hurt. Inside the opera house, chandeliers spilled gold light across velvet balconies while an orchestra tuned softly near the stage below. Wealthy elites filled the massive room dressed like old Hollywood royalty. Conversations quieted subtly the second Adrian entered beside me. Heads turned instantly. Whispers followed. The most feared man in Manhattan had arrived. But this time he was not alone. Adrian guided me carefully through the crowd with one hand resting lightly against my back. Protective. Proud. Public. Every step felt surreal. Men nodded respectfully toward Adrian while women stared openly at me trying to figure out who I was to him. For once, Adrian did not hide the answer. Halfway across the ballroom, an older man approached us holding a champagne glass. Silver hair. Political smile. Adrian, he greeted smoothly. You finally decided to stop arriving alone. Adrian's hand tightened slightly against my back. This is Claire Bennett. The man smiled politely toward me. A pleasure. Then his eyes returned knowingly toward Adrian. Important? Silence settled softly around us. Years ago, Adrian would have changed the subject. Deflected. Hidden me behind distance and silence because fear made him believe love was weakness. But tonight he looked directly at the man without hesitation. Yes, Adrian answered calmly. The most important thing in my life. My breath caught completely. The ballroom noise faded into nothing around me. Adrian turned toward me slowly beneath the chandelier light while snow drifted softly outside the towering windows behind him. Every powerful man in the room watched him carefully. Waiting. Measuring. Adrian did not care anymore. His gray eyes locked onto mine with a tenderness that still felt impossible coming from a man like him. Then, in front of all of Manhattan's elite, Adrian lifted my hand slowly to his lips and kissed my knuckles gently. Not possessive this time. Not controlling. Reverent. Honest. I spent 2 years pretending silence could protect us, he said quietly enough that only I could hear him. But losing you terrified me more than any enemy ever could. Tears burned instantly behind my eyes. Adrian rested his forehead lightly against mine for one brief second while orchestra music rose softly through the opera hall around us. You asked me once why I never fought for anything emotionally, he whispered. The truth is, you were the first thing in my life worth risking everything for. And standing there beneath gold light and falling snow with the most dangerous man in New York looking at me like I was the only thing keeping him human, I finally understood something beautiful. Love did not soften Adrian Moretti. It simply gave all that power somewhere gentle to belong.